Welcome, everybody, to our first hub meeting of the year.
Wow.
I know. Just as a refresher, this is our hub mission. Is a peer learning community for patient-family partners collaborating with the 11 states that make up Cynosure HQIC. Patient-family partners will use their lived experiences to co-create improved care for all people in partnership with the Cynosure HQIC hospitals. These are our agreements. We practice active and empathetic listening and sharing, challenge the idea and not the person, be both teachers and learners, take space and make space, stories stay and the lessons leave. We use I statements. One person speaks at a time, and we be here and present now. Our agenda for today, we'll do our welcome. Lindsay will lead us through a debrief of the PFEE Sprint sessions 1 and 2. We'll go through the SDOH programming and then do a refresher of the hub and the PFPC scope. And our welcome question is, what are your goals for the new year? Either personal or work related. It could be either. I can go ahead and start. Mine are personally, our goal is to shop more locally this year. We've got, living in Eugene, have so many amazing local markets and stores that we are going to we're going to support those local businesses this year. So that is my goal for the new year. I will start with Barbara.
It's not fully formed yet, but it has something to do with creating space for others and for myself.
I love that, creating space for yourself too. That's really great. Thank you, Barbara. Glenn.
I just texted I need to step off for a second, but because dealing with something on the other line. But my goal for the new year is I'm going to try to keep it consistent with everything I do. I'm going to say not to meet my total out-of-pocket expenses for medical care this year, because that was my last thing I talked about.
That was, yes. Thank you.
I got to step off though.
Yep. Sorry, I missed that. That chat there. Nadine.
Yes, mine's similar to Barbara's, that take space, make space, really resonates with me. I'm very guilty of that, as you all know. But even in line with that, it's more the make space. I take too much space. That's the whole problem. But I still want to be better at reframing my suggestions. So I'm clearer, more receptive to them. I'm going to work on that, especially listening.
Thank you. Those are great. I love take space, make space, and I think there's always space for us to do both. Suzanne.
So I think mine would be, I just want to end the year in better health. I recognized at the end of this last year that I had decreased in my health, and just decided that I want to end this year in a better place than I ended last year.
I love that. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Libby?
Oh boy, I have so many goals, so many things to work on. I think it's I love the sense of continuous improvement. So I think just continuing to be present and just manage my time a little bit better.
That's a good one.
Stop trying to do so much.
Perfect. And Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. One of my goals for the new year is to just get more organized overall, so I can do all the things in a organized fashion.
Do all the things that I'm not going to do anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. All right. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. And I'll actually keep it with Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So I just wanted to bring kind of a recap of the Cynosure HQIC Patient Family for Equity Sprint that we have been supporting hospitals through, I guess, the last over a month or so meeting. Yeah, it's been a sprint. We've so far had 3 sessions. The third one wrapped up last week, and the fourth one will be next week. So just wanted to do kind of a look back and then, answer any questions. And would also we talked about how to continue this peer learning community. So we've had some discussion about that, but would love additional ideas as well. But Laura, if you could go to the next slide. So just as a refresher, the topics for each session kind of evolved after each session. We started off with a really good plan in session 1, just really focused on helping the hospital's action plan for what steps they want to take to engage patients and families in their hospital's improvement activities. So that first session was really content heavy. We wanted to do some of that level setting so the hospitals were on the right page. We're all speaking the same language to say. But after that session, we learned that the hospitals wanted a lot more time in those breakout sessions, learning from each other. So in the second session, we started off with breakout sessions so the hospitals could talk about how their action planning was coming along. And then we spent the last half of that meeting talking about recruitment practices and just helping them think through what that process looks like, how to invite patients and families to the activities that they are planning to test, no matter if it's a survey, a focus group, or a formal advisory council. What does recruitment look like? So we talked with them about that. And then in the session last week, we really focused on lessons learned. We spent even more time in the breakout rooms, about 20 minutes or so. We had 3 different breakout rooms. They each had a different topic, and just kind of talked about what we've learned, what's been accomplished, what are our barriers, what do we need to move forward for their hospitals, and learned a lot through that. I think a lot more topics bubbled up as to where hospitals were struggling. In my room in particular, it was leadership and staff engagement. I know Libby's room had an interesting conversation about how to create messages using a new tool out to the community. And then Jackie Conrad from Cynosure HQIC facilitated a room as well. And they talked a lot about recruitment strategies. So putting messages together and what types of documents can you put together to get these opportunities out there. The fourth session will be next week, and this is a crossover event with the work that Cynosure is doing on the social drivers of health screening. So we'll be talking about co-designing social drivers of health screenings with patient family partners, really encouraging hospitals to engage patients and families in how they develop their screening programs to ensure that, the screening processes, the resources that patients get connected to are all informed by patients and families. So we'll have more to share after that session next week. Go to the next slide, Laura. So as far as participants, we ended up with 88 people registered, which I was very excited about. Knew that not all 88 of them would participate, and that's okay. And actually for the first session, we saw exactly half of those participants. And that pretty much aligns with a lot of our other offerings. We'll get 100 registrations and then 50 participants. For whatever reason, it turns out to exactly half of that. We did see some attrition over the second session, and I think people come to learn. And I'm assuming this, but some might realize that maybe that they're not in a place to get started and they need to kind of refocus. And I think that's totally okay. I think we've really captured those that are interested in patient-family engagement, and I would call that a success for us. It's been slightly difficult to get face-to-face with a lot of these hospitals and understand where they're at with patient-family engagement, and I think this gave us a really clear picture of the hospitals in the states who were at least had interest in moving patient-family engagement forward at their hospitals. We did see more people on the third session last week. The second sprint also fell not during the holidays, but very close to them. So I attribute that as well. But we did record all of the sessions, and I know people also registered to get the recordings and just listen in to the content and the conversations. And I just put a thank you to patient-family partners that have participated. I think many of you here have had a role, and also Beverly and Anthony. I just appreciate not only your participation on the sprints, but in those debrief sessions. So we've had debriefs after every sprint session to talk about, what worked, how could we improve, and those conversations have really shaped our continued improvement throughout these sprints. So just thank you very much. And yeah, Nadine, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple things I'd like to say. I was quite impressed in the different sprints how forthcoming these hospital representatives were. They weren't like ashamed that they weren't further along, or they didn't boast that they were further along. I was pretty impressed with that. And then as far as it has nothing to do with me, but since I spoke during session 3, I think, time is so precious, especially when you go to breakout sessions. I think you should have been consistent and had the last one that wants a picture of myself plastered, the last one. But I would say if you're going to have a guest speaker from one of our group, have a picture and have as much of the bio in bullet form that would make sense. So you're not pontificating when it comes to me pontificating, and you just get to the heart of the matter and say things that are really pertinent to that sprint series, but let all the fluff be posted with the picture, and it makes it more personal,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's good advice. I'll take that back for future. And I think we're doing another a totally different webinar session yesterday, oh my gosh, next week. I haven't had any coffee today. We're out, so yeah, it's sad. So still working my brain.
Crisis.
I know. Next week, and we're actually doing that, Nadine, and I've taken from that too. So moving forward, using the photo and then like 3 of the big points that you want to get across. So I think, yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. All right, Laura, if you could go to the next slide. So in each of the sessions, we asked where the hospital participants were at as far as their confidence in engaging patient family partners in their hospital improvement work. And the responses have been fairly consistent, but we've seen some fluctuation, which is interesting. So I'll run through them and then just kind of look back. So for sprint 1, obviously had, some that were not at all confident. There was a good amount that were very confident, and then the majority were somewhat confident. So right in the middle there. So on the next slide, you'll see the sprint 2 responses, similar, but, and we were looking at this during the sprint session last week, the third one, and we saw people move from either not at all confident or very confident to the space of being somewhat confident. And Clarissa, who's a patient family partnership council member, made a really good observation that, even people who are moving from very confident to somewhat confident is a good sign, because they're listening, they're absorbing, they're asking questions, they're really thinking thoughtfully about how patient family engagement can work at their hospital, which may be, pushing their confidence down a little bit. So I thought that was a really interesting observation and something I hadn't really thought of, that even people moving from very confident to somewhat confident is still a good sign, because they're here, they're curious still. And I just thought that was really interesting. And then the third confidence poll is on the next slide. And I didn't make this one as big, sorry. But we kind of went back to that the first sprint series as well. And I think we can contribute this to a few different things. You saw the variation of participants, numbers at least throughout each of the sessions. But I still think, I'm happy to see that we have so many hospitals that have some semblance of confidence in engaging patients and families in their improvement work, and really, boosting that confidence through coaching and all of our other offerings as well. We also talked about, how can we connect those who have a lot of confidence, who have been engaging patients and families in their improvement work, with those who aren't so confident, and being able to continue to learn from each other. On the next slide, we also asked about recruitment. So we asked this question on the third session last week, after we had talked about recruitment in the second session. So we saw 50% of the participants were actually currently recruiting, which I thought was a really great sign. They had moved from just starting these action plans and starting to create some ideas to now actively recruiting for patients and families to participate in those engagement activities. There were also some that were planning to start either this year or within the next month or so. So we talked about, again, ways to reconnect the hospitals, so we can have those who are currently recruiting share what they're doing with those who are planning to start within the year. And on the next slide, I think, this is what's next. So I just pulled this slide from the last sprint session just to share, what we're thinking, or what we're encouraging hospitals to do next. We have done a session evaluation for each of the sessions. I actually haven't looked at the third session yet, so I'll take a look at that and share. Encouraging hospitals to continue working through those action plans that they developed in the beginning. Recruitment, which we've seen, those hospitals are continuing to move forward. And then implementing their action plans, or implementing those activities that we talked about, the surveys, the listening sessions, the focus groups, to test with the patient family partners that they've been recruited. And we've been using this PFEE-sprint at pfccpartners.com as kind of a listserv. It's been more of a way for me to get information out to the hospitals. I don't know how intuitive it is for other people to respond to it, but we've been encouraging them to use it. And so that is still there. And then we offer hospitals one-on-one PFEE coaching calls, which through this sprint, so far I've had 3 coaching calls out of it, and a multitude of emails, one-to-one emails, just asking for more information, a lot around recruitment, wanting to understand more of the process and looking for templates and, examples from other organizations. So that's been really great. And then, of course, encouraging everyone to join the 4th session next week. Yeah, Nadine?
Yeah, quickly, did you get any overall overarching things that were said by the attendees, of either you as the program director and Bev and Libby formulated the sessions, or what they got out of it, the content, or us as speakers or participants from our point of view, any critiques that that stood out that we could improve upon?
That's a good question. I haven't, like I said, I hadn't looked at the third evaluation, but I'm happy to, for all of the patient family partners that have spoke or had an active role in the sprints, I can share that those evaluations with you, so you can kind of have an idea and see some of the feedback that we got.
Oh, I'm fine with sharing it with everybody. I'll learn from it just like everybody else will.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I'll share some of those, of course. So I also wanted to ask, as far as what's next, all of these hospitals wanted to continue. On our fourth session, we're not going to have as much or any opportunity for breakout rooms and things of that matter because we're really focused on the social drivers of health and kind of bringing that all together. So we had some discussion about how we can continue this motivation, this momentum, to keep this peer learning community going forward. So one of the ideas was to, bring everybody back in 3 months just to have some open discussion. I know Nadine and Barbara, you talked about putting groups of 2 into breakout rooms so they can, really connect and have longer conversations with each other. So I just wanted to see if there were any additional ideas on how we can continue this momentum with these hospitals that are engaged and are motivated to engage their patients and families. Yeah, Glenn?
I think I mentioned this to somebody, and I don't want to speak for everybody else, but what if we were to assign like a patient family advisor to each person that's been participating? And that way we could, at least talk, they could talk to us, and then we could provide guidance along the way as they're trying to navigate how to form, storm, norm, perform.
Mm-hmm. That's
They're obviously reaching out to you, though, you said, but if we were to maybe assign a person, then they're and have a regular call, or not even a regular call, but give them the opportunity to reach out and help them in the process as they're moving through the patient family experience.
Yeah, I think we would have to get creative about how we would do that, just because there are so many hospitals, and I wouldn't want to overwhelm the patient family partners with, assigning you 5 hospitals, because if you're meeting regularly with those 5 hospitals, that's a lot of extra work. But I think we could think creatively about how to engage you in that one-on-one coaching, or, more one-on-one with those hospitals. I like that idea because I definitely think there's benefit from hospitals talking with all of you who have so much experience, being a patient family partner, advisor. Yeah, it's just, there are so many hospitals, so it's hard the logistics of that.
I also want to speak to sort of the contractual obligations and responsibilities that we have as a PFE contractor to Cynosure. And that is, we were contracted because we have literally stood up hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, what was I saying? Hundreds of patient family advisory programs across several different settings. We've created strategies. And so that technical assistance piece is really the part that we are responsible for. And so Cynosure contracted with us because of our gateways approach. And so in order to do one-on-one coaching independently, we would need to do training with all of you to get you knowledgeable of our approach, so that we were providing a consistent technical assistance approach. That said, if we think about this, not so much in coaching and technical assistance, but more in that lived experience that is so enormously valuable, I'm with Lindsay. Let's figure out a creative way to bring those 2 pieces together. I don't know, maybe we even have just an open, patient family partnership office hour where you guys, they can come to you and ask you questions based on your lived experience. And so it's a little bit of a fine line, but it's one that I want to call out because it's important for us to hold that line in terms of what we've committed to Cynosure to do. I see Barbara has her hand up. I don't know, Lindsay,
Go ahead, Barbara.
You already have the model of the coffee hour, where there's a topic, but there's also open discussion. What about what you were just saying, Libby, about in terms of bringing them in together occasionally, about setting up a coffee hour specifically for Cynosure members and for those interested in, and it could be open. So it could be patient family partners could be there. You would be there to provide the expertise and the consistency from week to week. And who knows?
Yeah. I really like that
Really?
open, yeah, that open coaching call, but if we can call it something fun, like come have a coffee and talk PFEE with us, I think there'd be more interest around that, and have all of you participate in it as well, or Patient Family Partnership Council members.
And that could really make that connection as to this challenge that we have to keep the hospital's momentum going and keep nurturing their relationships with each other as well. That could go a long way. Oh, lunch and
Yeah,
learn.
lunch and learn, of course, those are great. And I like the, oh, what?
I'm just curious what others think of that. Glenn, Nadine, do you think that would be a viable effort?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Just kind of to let the hospitals just listen to us, kind of not brainstorm, but just have us talk, and they have to listen.
I like the roundtable idea too. I think that could be, even a different offering down the road. Yeah. Or we could gather questions from hospitals ahead of time. Ask a patient family partner roundtable.
Right.
Done that before, but yeah, you're doing that again. Great. Well, this is really helpful. I think that's the end of my slides, and we'll definitely continue to engage you through how we continue to keep this peer learning going, because the hospitals appreciate it. And I think it was Jackie at Cynosure who said, the hospitals, we've given them all of the content and tools, and they have it all, so they know how to do it, but now they want to see how others have done it. And like really get into the what to do with everything that they have. So that's our next step, but appreciate all of your input as always. So thank you.
And Barbara has her hand up too.
Oh, did you have more, Barbara? Sorry.
Just one final thought, Lindsay, you said that people have been downloading the recordings of the sprints for those who haven't been able to attend. Sometimes it's hard for people to show up at a specific time and place. And that made me wonder about maybe a library of vignettes, 2, 3, 5 minutes, where you maybe interview a Cynosure member, on a particular topic, or you interview a patient family partner on a particular topic, and build up that library.
I love that. That actually completely aligns with our brainstorm that we had on our staff retreat this week. We brainstormed a ton of ideas on some of those quick little snippets that we want to get out there, because we have so much, a wealth of knowledge and information and experience and stories that, we want to get out there. So that's one of our objectives or goals for this year. So you are reading our minds, Barbara. I like it.
So that's all to say, you should all get a sassy new haircut like Barbara, because you'll be on a camera coming to you soon.
I was actually going to say, without my hair, I can hear you better.
Barbara, you're the best. And I see Suzanne's comment, the spotlight. Yes, Suzanne, on my to-do list has been a template for capturing those kind of spotlights. So more to come on that, certainly. And before we leave this sprint, what I just wanted to call out a couple of things. One, way to go, Lindsay. You put together, this was not a light lift, and you and Bev and Laura, the whole team has really done a great job putting that together. And I think that it's been a very intentional, it's been a great learning curve for all of us. And I just can't tell all of you how much we appreciate all of the feedback that helps us get better. It helps us move forward. And so that's one reason we spent so much time on this today, because you guys all invested in this process, and we want to bring back to you what's happened because of it. So as Lindsay was talking, I'm channeling Glenn in my mind saying, well, how are we going to know if that had any effect? So Glenn, I have an answer for you. That pesky PFEE assessment is going to come back out the end of January. And so that's just enough time for our hospitals to be able to say with that maturity model, we made steps forward. We moved from forming to storming. We moved from storming to norming. And so that's how I'm going to finally come back to you. And we have some bold goals. We had almost 50, right at 50% of our of the HQIC hospitals who completed the assessment in July said they were in the forming stage. I have in my whiteboard in my office that after the January, that number will be at 10%, and we will have the balance. Math is really hard in the storming stage. So I want to see that movement. We don't have to have everybody performing yet, but let's see that movement. So that's what I'm really excited to see.
I think that's great, but then my next question is going to be, if I remember correctly, the number of respondents was 119 on that.
I believe so.
We know that there's 300 and so hospitals.
Mhm.
So then what about the remainder? That's the next one I'll question.
That is the next one. That is next one. And I love that you're pushing us forward. I do. But I just want to sit in this for 1 second and say,
I'm sorry.
if we get that,
Congratulations. Yes, you're
we
right.
have Cynosure has this this strategy that I think makes sense, and it's start with the willing, gain some traction, build some momentum,
Yes.
and start to capture those guys. So
Okay.
more to come on that, but I'm going to sit with this for just a minute.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. Not at all. I love that you're pushing us forward. You're propelling us forward. That's
Definitely.
awesome. It's what we should be thinking about. And it is what I'm thinking about, I promise. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to just share, I was on every month I meet with all of the state hospital association representatives to find out how their hospitals are doing and what other technical assistance we can provide to them. And I was on the call with Jen Wagner at Montana Hospital Association yesterday, and Mountain View, Zoe at Mountain View and her team have attended all 3 sprint sessions. They've been incredibly active. I believe they've contacted Lindsay for some one-to-one coaching as well. They're moving forward with engaging patients and families and starting to recruit. And they are so excited. Their director of nursing has been chomping at the bit to implement Ready, Set, Go, but they wanted to wait for the patients and families to come on board to implement with them. And I just think, Ready, Set, Go doesn't get developed without you guys. The sprints doesn't get developed without you guys. And now we have one hospital that is really leading out the way and is going to become our spotlight, our test case. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I think that is, it's a pretty nice indication of the impact that we're all having collectively together.
It's great to celebrate those small wins too. One hospital can turn into 10 events, but I think it's good to take a look back. Yeah.
And it's also, for me, that was like, we put a lot of work into developing Ready, Set, Go. And it's been languishing a bit over the last couple of months with other priorities, but with readmissions being such a huge priority, now we're in the process of developing 3 sessions around readmissions based on Ready, Set, Go. So sometimes we don't, get it in the environment as quickly as we want it to, but I just love to see the hospitals asking for this, a director of nursing asking for this. I mean, that's somebody who can really make Ready, Set, Go happen in an organization. Yes. I love that, Suzanne. Yes.
Yeah. Like that.
That's the kind of connection that we're seeing the hospitals want to make with each other and that we want to nurture. So true. I agree, Nadine. All right. So I just wanted to kind of close that loop and let you know why we spend so much time on this, because we want you to see the impact of your efforts. All right. Anything else before we move on to the next project?
Move on.
Move on. We're
Next.
moving. Got it. All right. Next.
All right.
Please, Laura.
Yes. Moving on.
Nope, no more questions.
No more questions.
Forget about it. Laura, I'm going to ask you to jump ahead to two more slides.
This one? Next one.
Thank you very much. So some of you who were on the last patient-family partnership call may have heard Natalie explain this new CMS rule. The CMS rule is to screen for 5 social drivers of health for each hospital to screen for these 5 drivers of health: food insecurity, housing instability, transportation needs, utility difficulties, and interpersonal safety. This rule is going in, or has gone into effect as of the 1st. And so what hospitals are going to be measured on is on the next 2 slides. Laura, if you go down from there. As a reminder, they will be measured on the number of SDOH screenings they perform against all the adult inpatients. And the second measure is on the next slide. Yeah, thanks. Is the number of adult inpatients that screen positive for one of those drivers of health. So these are the 2 measures that CMS is starting with. And again, this is a starting point for all social determinants of health screenings within hospitals. We know there are landmines everywhere with screening and for social drivers. And we really want to be part of this conversation because hospitals across the country are going to be trying to stand up screening programs and implementing. And it keeps me up at night to think of a hospital establishing a screening program without talking to their patient family partners and their population, because it just feels like with the best of intentions, we may unintentionally cause harm. So yeah, Nadine.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be yapping again, but this is kind of near and dear to my heart because, I'm not exactly 20 anymore. And when I go to the doctor, especially the oncologist for some reason, rather than my primary, they give me that sheet of how you doing? Do you feel depressed? All those questions. And then the legend is right on the front of it. Now, who's going to want to answer honestly? If the patient scores up to 5, connect them with a psychiatrist or whatever. Well, people are going to be really adverse to that. How many are going to be, I don't know, I don't want to be presumptuous. How many are going to be enlightened and want to go forward with that? That legend should not be on the front of the survey or anywhere for a patient to see, if you ask me. There could be a little blurb. I wrote Bev about this, my thoughts, because I'm not really, wouldn't be an appropriate person for this, but I'm very passionate about it anyway. So I'm talking on both sides of my mouth, but it's got to be framed right. There's got to be a little paragraph of why you're asking. I know that seems so obvious, but I've done other surveys once you hit that magical 65 and there's no rhyme or reason. You're just filling it out because CMS wants this info.
Nadine, you're bringing up such a good point, and that I feel like there's a lot of those details about how these get set up. So you're talking about how it gets messaged to the public. I know that we have staff members that are intimidated beyond belief. Can you imagine going and asking a perfect stranger if they're feeling safe in their relationship? I mean, it's really, there's just a lot of discomfort all the way around. And so I think it is it's a very unique opportunity for us to really embed patient-family engagement for equity. We just can't do this separately. And so that's part of the crossover event is going to launch us into this kind of thinking.
Okay.
So I think that we should, and maybe we think about a really broad survey for the Cynosure Hub, the PFA network, see if we can get into the hospitals, the Cynosure Hospital, patient family advisory groups, anybody, any human, describe what social drivers of health screening is, and then ask what concerns people might have about that. And then we'd get a really full, digestible list of, these are the things that we need to hear about, and I imagine, for instance, that we might get a heck of a lot of people being very concerned about that public messaging. And so we know, okay, that's an area we really need to be focused on. And the greater of we need to, the hospitals are figuring this out. We're figuring this out. CMS is figuring this out. I mean, we have to enter this learning space together.
Yeah, and see what bubbles up. But I'm telling you, every time I fill out that form, I think, who designed this? Who did CMS call on to help design this? Because it's so off-putting. It's not framed in a positive way.
So here's another little interesting aside. For those of you who know Danny Van Leeuwen, he is a patient family partner. He's very, very involved. In fact, he's on the board for Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, PCORI. And he does this podcast where he interviews different folks related to health. And he interviewed the gentleman who really pushed through that behavioral health screening in primary care and pushed through that policy and legislation, and really felt like that was, the big win of his career. And when Danny interviewed him, he said, I realized we didn't have that as well thought out as we needed to have that. And so his own learning, and so I guess that's, I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting that even with the best of intentions, we all need to keep learning. So anyway, that was just an aside, but where do I want to go next? So these are the two points, data points that the hospitals will be returning to CMS. Above this, Laura, if you'd flip back to that first slide, I'm sorry, I had these out of order. For the way I was addressing it. So in addition to giving those data points, hospitals will have to attest to each of these 5 domains. So they will have to attest that equity is a strategic priority. They will have to attest that they are performing data collection with these elements in mind. On the next slide, going to the 3rd domain, that they're analyzing the data and they're using it to create the quality improvement in domain 4. And then that leadership is fully engaged in social drivers of health screening and in creating resources for positive screens. In essence, that's me paraphrasing. You're welcome to read these slides verbatim. So these components look an awful lot like the second part of the patient family engagement for equity assessment. If you remember, there's 12 items to that assessment. 5 are related to patient family engagement. The first 3 at the bedside, the second, the patient family advisory program, and the facilitator. And then the other is the health equity organizational assessment from AHRQ. So our challenge is, if this is the way the hospitals are going to be attesting to this work, is the second half of our assessment, how much alignment is there? So this is the challenge. I'm sorry, I'm not articulating this super well, but on the PFEE assessment as we have it, there are 8 items related to equity. On this, they have 5 attestations. As I compared the two, there's really one primary component of the 8-item assessment that isn't embedded in this attestations, and that is data validation. So that's not really embedded in this. So the question is, how do we sort of manage the assessment we have versus what CMS is going to be asking hospitals to do? And one of the things that I wanted to share was, after reviewing it again and again, and looking for those lanes of alignment, it seems to me if they were to complete the assessment They would have all the information they needed for the attestations. But the converse would not be true. So I just love to open your thinking about where your ideas about where we go from here. I'm not really sure. I'm going to be asking the State Hospital Association leaders as well on Tuesday. So anyway, that's my challenge. What do you guys think? I think Nadine was first and then Glenn.
I'm so sorry, I never lowered my hand from before. Skip me. Please.
That's okay.
Pardon
Go,
me.
Glenn.
I just have a clarification question. Why does the assessment have to line up with the attestations? Do they have to?
They don't have to.
What's the concern?
I'm sorry?
I missed the concern then. What?
They don't have to. And it's a good point. It just, I don't want the hospitals to feel like the assessment is another thing that they have to do that isn't going to be relevant to the other requirements that they have to do. Does that make sense?
Missing validation is the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the validation's on the assessment, but not on the attestation.
Yes, and the assessment, if you remember, is in that maturity model again. So the hospitals don't have to say, yes, we are, no, we're not. They get to say, we're doing these steps, and now we're doing these steps. And so we also provide guidance for each of the metrics in there in terms of how they can move from one stage to the next.
Okay, I don't have an answer for you.
That's okay. That's quite all right. I know it's a bit of a quandary. Barbara, what are your thoughts?
What came to mind as you're describing the challenge is that the hospitals first, what's going to attract their mind share is whatever CMS wants, and whatever CMS says. So I found myself thinking, is there a way to fold validation, data validation into one of these domains so that it doesn't get lost?
Mm-hmm.
But as you're teaching them how to move through these domains, the pieces that aren't overtly included in the CMS requirements, but you have them on your forms, get somehow folded under these attestations, so that you're not competing with CMS. You're kind of enlightening what the CMS requirements are.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how to, I mean, we can't really fold things into the attestation, right? Because that is what CMS is asking hospitals to say, yes, we absolutely are doing. So we can't really, I don't know that we can add anything to that and have them still make the same attestation. So that's kind of the quandary, is like, how do we keep that as an important element? But then how do we, back to Glenn's earlier concern of, we had 119 people complete the assessment. And if we want to see that number increase, and they have to now do an assessment and an attestation, that's where I'm a little bit struggling.
The way I may not be expressing it well, but
I'm not understanding.
I think what a lot of the value that you bring is that you translate things. You make them doable, you make them realistic, you make them actionable. And it occurs to me that something like data validation is essential to data analysis and quality improvement, because how are they going to know if they're making the right moves based on the data they have, unless that data is somehow validated? So you bring the you make the covert overt.
That makes sense. I get it now.
Okay.
That I get that. Thank you. So you're saying keep it as part of our technical assistance, even if it's not overtly in the attestations.
Right. There may be other things too that aren't overtly in there, but
Sure.
you know, if they don't do it, it's going to have a big hole in it. And that's your brand, that's your value.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Suzanne?
Yeah, is there some way on the assessment that you have already put together to highlight or even just highlight a portion? I don't know what color you'd use, but then just put like a little checkbox on the side, and over here, maybe on that side, put CMS attestation. You know, this matches with CMS attestation domain 3, and like a checkbox, so that on your assessment, it's already being collected.
That makes a lot of sense too. Yeah. I like that. Almost because if like I said, if they do the assessment, they will have all the information they need to make the attestation, but just highlighting it and making that easy for them to find.
Yeah, that way they can already see that they're meeting the CMS requirement. You know, it could just have a separate category that just says, you know, this matches domain number 3, and then a checkbox, yes, we completed that, or whatever. Just so that data is being pulled, it's just not being pulled separately on a separate form.
Thank you. That I like that. So really pulling both of those ideas together then, kind of keeping our assessment the way it is, highlighting where they overlap or where the information is for the attestations, and continue the technical assistance related to the 8 domains.
Yeah, that way you're not recreating anything
Yeah.
or rewriting what CMS said, or necessarily rewriting what you've said.
Yeah.
It's all right there, and you can just go ahead and collect that data within the paperwork that you've already created.
Like that. Well, as always, this has been a really great conversation. Nadine.
Well, I'm really afraid to open my mouth. If you notice, I've been quiet for a few minutes. It's rare, I know. But I couldn't help but think, this is not a new concept. I mean, you've been doing this for years. This is not the first time CMS has rolled out something that's so concrete. You know, it's not obscure. It's a measurement. That's the name of their game. How have you done it in the past?
It's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. So yeah, with the PFEE metrics, we had to adapt and backfill those with more nuance, with more information, with that. Okay, all right. You guys always help me think. Barbara?
I'm actually right now on a CMS technical advisory panel to come up with measures for social drivers of health. And a lot of our conversation is, well, what do you mean by that? or how might they go about doing that? I mean, CMS, I think, is notoriously opaque in their descriptors of their expectations. And again, I think a lot of the value that you do for hospitals is translate, make it actionable. And I can almost see each of these domains, both the attestation and the elements, need unpacking. They need a step ladder, for how do you do
Oh,
this?
I
What
love
does
that.
it mean? And I can almost see, instead of having like your separate document and this as a separate document, taking Suzanne's idea, but making it even more robust in a way, so that it's a
Action.
checkbox, but it's also the unpacking of, well, what does this really mean? And here are some ways that you might go about doing it.
Really helpful. You guys have completely reframed my thinking, and this feels so much more comfortable.
Yeah, so it's not open to interpretation. You really laid out what each element means.
Yeah.
So you get good data.
Awesome. Barbara, I see your question, and yes, we can send out these slides, because we'll be hearing a lot more about this. So just to wrap that up, and actually we're close to wrapping up. Laura, do you have more that you need to get to?
I have the hub and PFPC scope, just a refresher.
Oh yeah. Before we go there really quickly, the crossover event next week on the 18th is the first sort of opportunity for us to be in collaboration with Natalie and for the hospitals and we've got quite a few registered on the call, to be thinking in this way and to really, keep patient family engagement tightly connected to these social drivers of health. So if you have the time to attend, please feel free to join us. We'll have a couple of patient family partners share their own experiences with being screened for social drivers, and hopefully that will launch the conversation. And then, yeah, I'd really like to take back this idea of getting just a massive amount of data from patient family partners, patient family caregivers, even if they're not in the advisory role, about their concerns for screenings. So, all right. Go ahead, Laura. Let's just, I'll do it really fast.
I go through these.
I think most of you saw this graphic on the Patient Family Partnership Council meeting, and I just wanted to bring it back forward again here to the hub, because this is a larger circle of the Patient Family Partnership Council meeting, and yet we have a small group. So one of our challenges is, how do we really engage more of the HQIC hospitals patient family partner community into the hub? How do we be inviting? How do we open up? Our team was thinking that gathering input and asking the hospitals to say, hey, share this survey with your patients and families to let us know about social drivers of health, something we could turn back to the hospitals that might help them to bring in more of their patient family partners as well. But would just love in follow-up if you could send in any ideas you have for creating the invitation into this group. And maybe that's something we could do in a coffee chat as well as a different coffee chat. So ideas like that, I know you guys have a million, send them, please. All right. And with that, I will turn it back to Laura to close this out.
Perfect. And we can definitely do that via email too. I'll send this recording out in follow-up. Our next meeting is February 9th, same time, same place. And like I said, we'll be sending out this recording in follow-up, and we'll see you all next month.
Laura, could we include the registration for the crossover event in the follow-up as well, please?
Yes, that'll be in your inboxes.
And I'll take this opportunity to remind you again about the slides, please.
Yes, I have that written down too. Thank you.
We love reminders.
Yes. All right.
Great conversation. You guys have been so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.